The table was full. The lamps were lit. Everyone was laughing. And the man who built the chairs had no place to sit. That was the night Arun finally understood something he had avoided for years. Sometimes, the people you keep showing up for are not confused about your value. They are comfortable using it. He had repaired their doors. He had fixed their roof before the monsoon. He had built the wooden table where they now gathered for the harvest meal. He had shaped every chair with his own hands. But when the family sat down to celebrate, there was no chair left for him. Not by accident, not because they forgot, but because in that house, Arun had become useful enough to depend on and invisible enough to exclude. If you have ever been the person everyone calls when something breaks, but no one remembers when something beautiful happens, this story is for you. Because what looked like the most painful rejection of Arun's life was the beginning of the life that had been waiting to save him. Arun lived at the edge of a small village. His house was narrow, built from clay walls, old timber, and memories no one wanted to speak about. He was 32, old enough to understand responsibility, young enough to wonder if his own life had been postponed for too long. His father had died when Arun was barely a man. From that day on, everyone in the family seemed to decide one thing without saying it aloud. Arun would become the strong one. He would not complain. He would not ask for much. He would not need comfort. His mother leaned on him. His younger brother, Rohan, borrowed from him. His relatives praised him when they needed something and forgot him when they did not. And Arun accepted it, not because he was weak, but because he believed love meant staying useful. He became a carpenter because wood made more sense to him than people. Wood had grain. Wood had pressure points. Wood would show you where it was cracked if you knew how to listen. People were harder. They could take your time, your labor, your kindness, your silence, and still call you selfish the first time you asked for a place of your own. Arun's workshop stood behind the family house. It was small, dark, and always covered in a thin layer of sawdust. To others, it looked like a place of labor. To Arun, it was the only room in the world where his hands knew what they were doing. Every morning, before the village was fully awake, he lit a small oil lamp and began working. The sound of his chisel became part of the house. Tap, pause, scrape, breathe, again. He fixed broken stools for neighbors who promised to pay later. He built storage boxes for relatives who said family should not count money. He repaired Rohan's cart after Rohan damaged it in a careless gamble. And when the harvest season came, his family asked him to build something special. A long wooden table, 8 chairs, strong enough for the whole family, beautiful enough for guests. His mother touched the unfinished wood and said, "This year, people will see that our house still has dignity." Arun smiled quietly. He did not say he had stayed awake 4 nights to finish it. He did not say he had sold 2 of his own tools to buy better timber. He only lowered his head and kept sanding the edges until the wood felt smooth beneath his palm. Because some people do not ask to be seen. They keep hoping their sacrifice will speak for them. The harvest meal was the most important evening of the year, not because the family was wealthy. They were not. But because the meal gave them one night to pretend there was enough. Enough rice, enough light, enough laughter, enough pride to cover what was missing. All day, Arun worked without stopping. He carried water. He repaired the loose gate. He helped hang garlands near the doorway. He brought the finished table into the main room, with 2 village boys helping him carry the weight. When the table was placed at the center of the house, everyone admired it. His aunt ran her fingers across the polished surface. His uncle pressed down on one chair and nodded. Even Rohan smiled and said, "Brother, this looks like something made for a rich man's house." For a moment, Arun felt something warm rise inside him. Not pride exactly, something quieter. The feeling that maybe this time his work had made him visible. Then his mother looked around the room and said, "Good. Now go wash. The guests will arrive soon." Arun nodded. He returned to the workshop to clean the dust from his arms and change his shirt. He took longer than usual. Not because he was vain, but because for once he wanted to arrive not as the worker behind the celebration, but as part of the family inside it. By the time Arun returned, the meal had already begun. He stopped near the doorway. The lamps were glowing. The table was full. His mother sat at the head. His uncle and aunt sat beside her. Rohan sat near the center, laughing loudly. Children sat at the corners. Plates had been served. Food had been passed. Every chair was taken. For a few seconds, Arun thought someone would notice him. Someone would say, "Move a little. Let Arun sit." Someone would remember that the man standing in the doorway had built the place where they were gathered, but no one did. Then Rohan looked up, saw him, and smiled with the careless ease of someone who had never wondered whether there would be room for him. "Oh, Arun," he said. "You came late. Sit outside for now. We will send you food." A few people laughed softly, not cruelly enough to be called cruel, just lightly enough to make the wound harder to explain. His mother did not look at him. She only adjusted the edge of her sari and said, "There are guests today. Do not make it awkward. Do not make it awkward." Those words entered Arun more deeply than any insult could have, because in that moment, he understood the rule of the house. He could build the table. He could carry the weight. He could make everyone comfortable. But his pain was the thing that made the room uncomfortable. So he turned around before anyone could see his face change, and he walked back to the workshop alone. The workshop was dark except for one small lamp. Arun sat on a block of unfinished wood and listened. From the main house came the sound of laughter, bowls touching plates, children asking for more sweets, men talking loudly about land, weather, and money. The table he had built was holding the whole evening together, and he was outside it. For the first time, Arun did not try to explain it away. He did not tell himself they were busy. He did not tell himself there had been no space. He did not tell himself a good son should understand. He looked down at his hands. There was still sawdust beneath his nails. A thin cut crossed one finger where the chisel had slipped the night before. He had not even noticed it then. That was what frightened him most. Not that they had failed to see him, but that he had become so practiced at not seeing himself. After a while, a small brass plate appeared near the workshop door. Rice, a little lentil stew, one broken piece of flatbread. No one knocked. No one called his name. The plate was simply left there, like payment for a servant who should be grateful. Arun looked at it for a long time. Then he did something that surprised even himself. He did not eat. He stood up, took the plate, and placed it outside the family doorway. Then he returned to the workshop and closed the door. Not loudly, not dramatically, just firmly. And sometimes that is how a person begins to return to himself, not with shouting, but with one quiet refusal to keep accepting crumbs as love. The next morning, Arun did not enter the main house. He opened the workshop before sunrise and began working. His movements were slower than usual. Every sound felt heavier. Tap, pause, scrape, breathe. Again. Near midday, an old man appeared at the doorway. His name was Hari. Years earlier, when Arun was still a boy with grief in his chest and no skill in his hands, Hari had taught him how to hold a chisel. Hari was not family by blood, but he had been present in ways blood sometimes failed to be. He looked around the workshop and said nothing for a while. Then his eyes stopped on Arun's face. "You did not eat at the harvest meal," Hari said. Arun kept sanding the edge of a plank. "I was not hungry." Hari stepped inside slowly. Old men who have suffered do not always need the truth explained to them. They can hear it in the space between words. After a long silence, Hari touched one of the unfinished chairs and said, "Do you know what makes a table steady?" Arun did not answer. Hari said, "Not its size, not its polish, not how many people admire it." He placed his hand on one leg of the table. "A table is steady only when every leg stands on its own ground." Arun's hand stopped moving. Hari continued, "You have spent years being the leg everyone leans on. But tell me, Arun, where is your ground?" For the first time that morning, Arun looked up. And the question hurt, because it was not an accusation, it was a door. That evening, Rohan came to the workshop. He did not apologize. People who are used to your forgiveness often skip the apology and go straight to the next request. He stood near the doorway and said, "The left side of the table is loose. One of the guests leaned too hard on it last night." Arun looked at him. Rohan smiled awkwardly. "Can you fix it before the relatives come again tomorrow?" For years, Arun would have stood up immediately. He would have wiped his hands, carried his tools, and repaired what had been damaged. He would have done it quickly, silently, almost gratefully, because being needed had once felt close enough to being loved. But something had shifted, not loudly, not completely, only enough for him to hear his own breath before answering. "No," Arun said. Rohan blinked. "What?" "I have work to finish." Rohan laughed, but the laugh had no confidence in it. "This is family work." Arun lowered the plank in his hands. "Yesterday, I was not family enough to sit at the table." The words entered the air and stayed there. Rohan's face tightened. "Do not be dramatic," he said. "It was one meal?" Arun nodded slowly. "Yes, one meal." Then he looked toward the house. "But it showed me many years." Rohan had no answer for that, because the truth, when spoken calmly, is harder to fight than anger. Anger gives people something to blame. Calm gives them a mirror. For the next few days, the house changed around Arun. Not because anyone admitted what had happened. Families often do not change through apology. They change through the discomfort of losing access to the person they took for granted. His mother stopped asking directly. Rohan avoided the workshop. Relatives whispered that Arun had become proud. This wounded him more than he expected. Because even when you begin to respect yourself, part of you still wants the people who hurt you to understand why. But they did not understand, at least not yet. And maybe that was the second lesson. Freedom does not always begin when others finally understand your pain. Sometimes it begins when you stop needing their understanding before you change. Arun started taking paid work outside the family. Small jobs at first, a door frame for a widow near the well, a grain chest for a farmer, a cradle for a young couple expecting their first child. He charged fairly, not harshly, not greedily, simply fairly. And each time someone placed coins into his hand, Arun felt something strange. Not wealth, not victory, reality. The quiet reality that his work had value, even when his family treated it like duty. One afternoon, Hari brought a merchant to the workshop. The merchant examined a chair Arun had made from neem wood. He pressed the joints, checked the balance, ran his palm across the smooth backrest. Then he said, "Who taught you to make wood feel alive?" Arun didn't know how to answer. Hari smiled from the doorway. "Pain did some of it," the old man said, "but the boy did the rest." The merchant ordered 12 chairs, then a table, then 3 carved storage chests for his home in the next town. For the first time in years, Aaron's future did not arrive as a family obligation. It arrived as a door opening from the outside. As the weeks passed, Aaron worked harder than before. But the work felt different. Before, labor had drained him because it disappeared into people who expected more. Now, labor returned to him. In coins, in respect, in quiet pride, in the way villagers began saying, "Go to Arun. His work lasts." Still, healing was not simple. At night, when the workshop grew silent, he sometimes missed the old version of himself. Not because that version had been happy, but because that version had known the rules. Say yes. Stay useful. Do not disturb anyone. Swallow the pain. Call it love. A small life can feel safe when you have mistaken familiar wounds for home. One evening, his mother came to the workshop. She stood at the entrance for a long time before speaking. "People are saying you charge now." Arun looked up from his work. "I do." She frowned. "Even relatives?" "Especially relatives," he said quietly. "Because relatives should know not to take without honoring." His mother looked hurt, and that was the hardest part. People who benefited from your silence often experience your boundaries as betrayal. She said, "After everything this family has done for you?" Arun set down his chisel. For a moment, he wanted to defend himself, to list every sacrifice, every night without sleep, every debt paid, every repair done without thanks. But then he remembered Hari's words, "Where is your ground?" So he did not list his pain like evidence in a trial. He only said, "I am not leaving the family. I am leaving the role that made me disappear inside it." His mother's eyes filled, but she said nothing. And Arun understood that some conversations do not end with agreement. They end with a person choosing not to abandon himself again. 2 months later, the merchant invited Arun to deliver the finished furniture to his home in the next town. Arun loaded the pieces onto a wooden cart before dawn. 12 chairs, 1 table, 3 carved chests, each piece wrapped carefully in cloth. Hari walked beside him for the first mile. The morning air was cool. The road was quiet. For a while, neither man spoke. Then Hari said, "You are walking differently." Arun looked down at his feet. "Am I?" "Yes," Hari said. "A man walks one way when he is trying not to be a burden. He walks another way when he knows what he carries has value." Arun smiled faintly. When they reached the merchant's home, the family gathered to see the furniture. The merchant's wife touched the table and said, "This belongs in the main room." His children sat carefully in the chairs, laughing at how strong they felt. The merchant paid Arun the full price, then added more. "For the care," he said. Arun looked at the coins. For a moment, he remembered the harvest meal, the first table, the full room, the plate left outside the workshop door. And then he looked at this second table, a table he had built not to earn a place in someone's love, but because his skill deserved to stand in the world. That was when he understood the hidden rescue. Being left out of the first table had forced him to build a life beyond it. The rejection had not proved he was worthless. It had revealed where he had been wasting his worth. When Arun returned to the village, people looked at him differently. Not everyone. Some still whispered. Some still believed respect was only acceptable when it came from outsiders. But Arun no longer moved through the village like a man asking permission to exist. He repaired his workshop roof, bought back the tools he had sold, placed a small wooden sign near the road. Arun Carpentry. Tables, chairs, doors, chests, fair work, fair price. The sign was simple, but to Arun it felt like a flag. One evening, as the sun lowered over the fields, he walked past the family house. Through the open doorway, he saw the harvest table, the same table, the same chairs. Only now, one chair near the side had a cracked leg. No one had repaired it. His mother saw him from inside. For a moment, their eyes met. There was sadness there. Maybe regret. Maybe pride. Maybe both. She looked as if she wanted to call him in. And Arun looked as if he might have entered. But then he did something different. He bowed his head gently. Not coldly, not cruelly, gently. Then he kept walking toward his workshop. Because healing does not always mean returning to the place that wounded you and asking it to become home again. Sometimes healing means you can pass by the old table, bless what it taught you, and keep walking toward the one you are building now. Maybe you know what Arun felt. Maybe you have been the reliable one, the strong one, the one who fixes things, the one who understands, the one who does not make it awkward. Maybe people called you kind when you stayed silent, but difficult when you finally told the truth. Maybe you spent years confusing being needed with being loved. And maybe one day, something happened that broke your heart. They left you out. They chose someone else. They forgot your sacrifice. They gave your seat away and expected you to smile. At first, it felt like rejection. But sometimes, rejection is not the end of your place. Sometimes, it is the end of your prison. Because the moment you are pushed away from the table where you were never honored, you finally have a chance to build one where your soul can sit down. Arun did not become free because his family suddenly understood him. He became free when he stopped waiting for people who used his strength to name his worth. That is the quiet truth of this story. Some doors close because life is protecting what is left of you. Some people leave you out because staying included would have cost you yourself. And some of your worst days are not destroying your life. They are forcing you to stop living inside a life too small for who you are becoming. So if this story found you at the right time, leave one word in the comments: rebuilded. Not because everything is easy, not because the pain did not matter, but because your life may not be over. It may simply be asking you to stop begging for a chair and start building your own table.